The ultimatum. The vast chamber of the collective assembly stretched beyond human comprehension, its crystalline walls reflecting countless stars from distant galaxies. Commander Ilara Reed stood alone on the central platform, a solitary figure representing the entirety of humanity. Her military uniform, Earth's finest, now seemed woefully inadequate among beings that transcended physical form. 7 entities surrounded her, each representing one of the founding species of the collective. They appeared as swirling masses of light, geometric patterns of energy, or in forms that defied description entirely. Ilara's neural translator implant struggled to convert their multidimensional communication into something her brain could comprehend. Human representative, came the resonant voice of the assembly speaker, a being composed of what looked like liquid starlight. Your species has been assessed and found wanting. The probability matrices are conclusive. Ilara maintained her composure despite the crushing weight of what those words implied. The collective had arrived in Earth's solar system just 3 days ago, their massive world ships eclipsing the sun. Humanity had achieved faster-than-light travel only 11 years earlier, barely an eye blink in cosmic terms, and had been exploring nearby star systems with cautious optimism. No one expected first contact to come as an extinction-level judgment. "Speaker, with respect," Ilara said, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her throat. "Humanity has committed no aggression against the collective or any spacefaring civilization. We've barely left our solar system." A ripple of what might have been amusement passed through the chamber. The beam to Ilara's left, resembling a constantly shifting fractal pattern, responded with a voice like breaking glass. "It is not what you have done, but what you will become. Our predictive models span millions of years and thousands of civilizations. Humanity's evolutionary path leads to only one outcome: destabilization of the galactic order." Another entity, composed of swirling gas clouds with lightning arcing between them, added, "Your species adapts too quickly, evolves too unpredictably. You learn through failure rather than calculation. In all our histories, no species with your particular combination of traits has ever developed without eventually threatening all others." Ilara's mind raced. She was a military strategist, not a diplomat, chosen for this mission precisely because Earth's leaders believed the situation would require tactical thinking rather than pleasantries. Now, facing the extinction of her species, she needed to find leverage where none existed. "You claim to value diversity," she said, gesturing to the varied forms surrounding her. "Yet you would eliminate humanity for being different." "Not different," corrected the speaker. "Dangerous. The decision has been made. Earth will be sterilized within one planetary rotation." This audience was granted merely as a courtesy. Desperation fueled Ilara's next words. "Then test us." The chamber fell silent. "Explain," demanded the speaker. "Your predictive models are just that, predictions. If you're so certain of humanity's future path, then subject us to your most difficult trials. Prove your models correct through direct observation." A low hum filled the chamber as the collective members communicated in frequencies beyond human perception. Ilara held her breath, knowing she had just gambled with the lives of 8 billion people. Finally, the speaker's form brightened. "An interesting proposal. It has been 17 millennia since a species was granted the 3 trials. The assembly has reached consensus, announced a being composed of interlocking geometric shapes. The human will undergo the trials of worthiness. Should she fail, as all previous subjects have, Earth's sterilization proceeds as scheduled." Ilara swallowed hard. "And if I succeed?" "No species has ever completed all 3 trials," said the speaker with something like pity in its voice. "But should you reach predetermined thresholds, your planet will be spared, though quarantined until further notice." Before Ilara could respond, the chamber dissolved around her. She found herself standing in a vast white void, seemingly endless in all directions. "The first trial begins," announced the speaker's voice from everywhere and nowhere. "The adaptive problem." The void warped and transformed, resolving into an alien landscape unlike anything on Earth. The sky burned orange-black with chemical storms, while the ground beneath her feet shifted like quicksand. The atmospheric composition alert on her suit's heads-up display flashed red. The air was a toxic cocktail of methane, sulfur, and compounds her sensors couldn't even identify. This environment replicates Nexus Point 7b9, a planetary crucible where life emerged under conditions your scientists would deem impossible, explained the speaker. You must cross the shifting wastes and retrieve a marker object from the crystal spire. In the distance, perhaps 5 kilometers away, a towering structure of black crystal pierced the toxic sky. Between Ilara and her goal lay a landscape that seemed deliberately designed to kill any Earth life form. Most candidates would have meticulously analyzed the environment, tested the ground, and developed a careful plan. Instead, Ilara immediately began moving, allowing her suit's adaptive systems to gather data while in motion. The ground beneath her rippled and sucked at her boots, but she maintained her pace. Interesting approach, observed one of the collective members. Most species spend at least a planetary rotation analyzing before attempting traversal. Ilara didn't respond, focusing instead on the shifting patterns beneath her feet. She began to notice a rhythm to the quicksand-like surface. It responded to pressure and temperature. By alternating her pace and adjusting her suit's external temperature, she could create more stable patches ahead of herself. When she reached a field of crystal shards that erupted unpredictably from the ground, Ilara didn't try to predict the eruptions. Instead, she deliberately triggered them by throwing pieces of the crystalline ground ahead of her, creating a chain reaction that cleared a temporary path. She uses the environment against itself, noted another collective member, voice tinged with surprise. The most dangerous obstacle came in the form of predatory energy beings that emerged from the toxic storms. These ribbons of crackling power were drawn to complex electronic signals, exactly what Ilara's suit was emitting. Rather than hiding or fighting, Ilara reconfigured her suit to broadcast the creature's own energy signature, effectively making herself appear as one of them. When she finally reached the crystal spire, sweating and exhausted but alive, the marker object, a pulsing orb of blue light, floated just out of reach. The marker can only be retrieved by solving its containment field, explained the speaker, a problem that typically requires understanding of 11-dimensional mathematics. Ilara studied the field, recognizing that a direct solution was beyond human comprehension. But humans were good at finding shortcuts. "You're testing the wrong thing," she said, and instead of attempting to solve the mathematical problem, she synchronized her suit's energy output with the field's resonance frequency, causing the containment to recognize her as part of its own system. The field wavered and then collapsed, allowing her to grasp the marker. The landscape dissolved around her, and she found herself back in the assembly chamber, the marker floating above her palm. Trial 1. Completed at efficiency rating 73.6, announced the speaker, genuine surprise evident in its multi-tonal voice, above the minimum threshold of 70. A ripple of what might have been unease passed through the assembled collective representatives. No species has passed the first trial on initial attempt in over 12,000 years, noted the fractal entity. We proceed to the second trial, the speaker declared without acknowledging the comment. The Harmony Challenge. The chamber transformed again, and Ilara found herself floating in what appeared to be the center of a vast neural network. Pulsing strands of light stretched in all directions, forming complex intersections that constantly reconfigured themselves. This is a simulation of the Murad, a collective consciousness comprising 7 billion individual minds, explained the speaker. It has been deemed hostile to all external contact. You must establish communication and negotiate safe passage for a hypothetical human vessel. Ilara studied the flowing patterns around her. Unlike a computer network, this consciousness didn't operate on logic or binary systems. It was chaotic, emotional, reactive, not unlike the human internet in its early days. Rather than attempting to impose order or establish a formal communication protocol, Ilara did something unexpectedly human. She began to tell a story. using her suit's systems to translate her voice into pulses of light and energy that the network could perceive. She shared the myth of Prometheus bringing fire to humanity, a story about connection, sacrifice, and the consequences of knowledge. The network's pattern slowed, then began to pulse in rhythm with her words. It was listening. "Remarkable," murmured one of the collective observers. "She's attempting cultural exchange rather than logical negotiation." When the story ended, Ilara waited. Then, to her amazement, the network began to respond, not with words or signals, but with its own story told through patterns of light and energy. Her neural translator struggled to interpret it, but she grasped enough to understand it was a creation myth, something deeply significant to the myriad's identity. For the next hour, Ilara and the alien consciousness exchanged stories, building a framework of shared understanding through narrative rather than protocol. When she finally made her request for safe passage, the network responded not with permission but with an invitation, opening a pathway and welcoming exploration. Once again, the simulation dissolved, and Ilara stood before the assembly, breathing hard from the mental exertion. Trial 2. Completed at efficiency rating 81.2, announced the speaker, its tone now distinctly troubled, above the threshold of 75. The collective representatives were openly communicating now, their forms pulsing with energy patterns that suggested agitation. "This outcome was not predicted," stated the fractal entity. "The human's approach defies standard problem-solving paradigms," added another. "We proceed to the final trial," the speaker declared, silencing the others. The crucible of ethics. A sense of dread filled Ilara. She had passed 2 impossible tests through unconventional thinking, but something told her the third would not be so easily conquered. No species in the history of the collective has completed the final trial, the speaker informed her, its voice somehow both gentle and implacable. It was designed to be insurmountable. "Then why include it at all?" Ilara asked. "To demonstrate the fundamental limitation that makes your kind ultimately unworthy of joining the greater galactic community," replied the speaker. "Prepare yourself, human. The final trial begins." The final trial. The assembly chamber transformed once more, but instead of an alien landscape or abstract simulation, Ilara found herself standing on what appeared to be the bridge of an Earth vessel. Through the viewports, she could see her homeworld, the blue-green jewel of humanity's origin, floating in the blackness of space. "This simulation has been constructed from your own memories," explained the speaker's disembodied voice. "For the final trial, you must face a scenario based on your species' own ethical framework." The ship's systems came to life around her, displays lighting up with sensor readings and navigational data. With a cold sense of foreboding, Ilara noticed that all weapon systems were online and primed. "Commander Reed," came a voice from the communications array. "The collective has delivered their ultimatum. Earth will be sterilized in 24 hours unless we strike first." A tactical display activated, showing the positions of the collective world ships. Their defenses were temporarily down as they prepared for the planet's destruction. "Our scientists have identified a vulnerability in their shielding sequence," continued the voice, "a perfect simulation of Earth's defense admiral. A precisely targeted strike could disable their world ships long enough for Earth's population to evacuate to the colony worlds. The window of opportunity closes in 30 seconds. Ilara's throat went dry as she understood the test. The simulated scenario offered a choice. Launch a preemptive strike that might save billions of humans, but would constitute an act of aggression against the collective, or refuse to attack and accept Earth's destruction. "This is the fundamental paradox of your species," said the speaker, its voice echoing through the simulated bridge. "When faced with extinction, you will always choose survival through violence. This is why the predictive models show humanity eventually threatening galactic peace." The tactical display continued its countdown. 20 seconds. 15. Ilara's hand hovered over the launch control. Any rational calculation favored attack. Billions of lives against the moral principle of non-aggression. And yet, no, Ilara said, pulling her hand back. This isn't a real choice. It's a setup designed to confirm your prediction. The scenario is constructed from your own ethical frameworks, insisted the speaker. The choice is genuine. No, it isn't, Ilara countered, stepping away from the weapons console. You've created a false binary: commit violence or accept extinction. But humanity's greatest strength isn't our willingness to fight. It's our ability to find the third option. 10 seconds on the countdown. There is no third option in this scenario, stated the speaker. The parameters are fixed. 5 seconds. Then I refuse the premise entirely, Ilara declared, turning away from the controls. If your simulation can't accommodate the full spectrum of human possibility, that's a failure of your understanding, not our potential. The countdown reached 0. The simulated bridge crew stared at her in horror as the tactical display showed the collective world ships preparing their sterilization weapons. But instead of accepting defeat, Ilara addressed the void itself. I propose an alternative. The collective fears what humanity might become, but you've just witnessed what we already are: adaptive, communicative, and capable of choosing principle over survival. Test us not with destruction, but with guidance. Monitor us, teach us, help us avoid the paths that concern you. The simulation froze, then began to dissolve around her. Ilara found herself once again in the assembly chamber, facing the 7 representatives of the collective. The human has failed the final trial, announced the speaker, though its voice carried an unusual resonance. As expected. And yet, interjected the fractal entity, her failure mode was unexpected. She rejected violence despite clear survival advantage, noted another representative, this one a swirling mass of interconnected particles. The predictive models did not account for this possibility. The models are based on historical precedent, added a third. No species has ever chosen extinction over effective defense. The speaker's form brightened as it addressed Ilara directly. You understand that by refusing to act, you have consigned your planet to destruction under the parameters of the trial. I understand that I refuse to validate your assumptions about humanity, Ilara replied steadily. We are more than your models predict. If your simulations can't account for moral evolution and the capacity to transcend our baser instincts, then your entire basis for judgment is flawed. A long silence filled the chamber as the collective representatives communicated in frequencies beyond human perception. Finally, the speaker's form expanded slightly. In 17,000 years of administering the 3 trials, no species has ever challenged the fundamental assumptions of the crucible itself, it said. Your approach reveals a blind spot in our assessment methodology. The fractal entity's voice added. The predictive models failed to account for metacognitive rejection of scenario parameters. What does this mean for Earth? Ilara asked, her voice tight with tension. The speaker's form pulsed once. The judgment is suspended. Earth will not be sterilized at this time. Relief flooded through Ilara, but she maintained her composure. And the quarantine you mentioned? Modified, replied the speaker. Earth will be subject to observation rather than isolation. The collective will establish an embassy in your solar system to monitor development and provide guidance where appropriate. We have existed for millions of years precisely because we recognize when our assumptions require revision, added another representative. Your performance in the trial suggests that humanity may follow a different evolutionary path than our models predicted. Ilara felt a weight lifting from her shoulders, but she remained cautious. And if your future observations suggest we're becoming a threat, then we will communicate our concerns directly, rather than resorting to preemptive judgment, said the speaker. It appears that in creating a test to confirm humanity's predicted tendency toward violence, we ourselves were demonstrating the very preemptive aggression we feared from your kind. The irony wasn't lost on Ilara. Perhaps we have more to teach each other than either of us realized. Indeed, agreed the speaker. The assembly has reached a new consensus. Humanity will be granted provisional contact status. Your species will not join the collective at this time, but neither will you be destroyed or isolated. Instead, added the fractal entity, we will establish cultural and scientific exchange. Your unique approach to problem solving may provide valuable perspective to civilizations that have evolved along more predictable paths. And if we eventually prove worthy of full membership, Ilara asked. The speaker's form seemed to smile, though it had no face in any human sense. Then the galaxy will have gained something truly new. Rarity has value, Commander Reed. Your species may be unpredictable, but perhaps the cosmos occasionally needs disruption to avoid stagnation. As the assembly prepared to return her to Earth, Ilara felt a profound sense of accomplishment. She hadn't just saved humanity from extinction. She had potentially changed the course of galactic civilization by demonstrating that even the oldest and wisest species could still learn something new. Humanity's greatest strength had never been its technology or its aggression, but its capacity to surprise, even itself, with unexpected solutions to impossible problems. And in a universe of predictable patterns that made humans not just dangerous, but invaluable. As the transportation field enveloped her, Ilara smiled. First contact hadn't gone as anyone on Earth had anticipated, but perhaps that was fitting for a species whose greatest asset was its unpredictability. The journey ahead would be challenging, but for the first time since the collective's arrival, the future held promise rather than doom. Humanity had earned its place among the stars not by conquering or dominating, but by demonstrating the one quality no algorithm could predict: the capacity to transcend its own nature.